Hello to our fantastic TYT viewers. I am honored to be here with the legendary Senator Bernie Sanders.
Legendary?
Legendary. Our audience certainly thinks so. And I'm very happy to be here because we are about to discuss policy, something that you don't see very often in most media coverage. And we're going to talk about healthcare in the United States and what we can do to improve it. Now, I want to start this off by asking you, Senator Sanders, what the number one issue on your mind is in the Trump era. Because during the election, you brought up so many important issues, affordable housing, college tuition, getting money out of politics, healthcare. In the Trump era, priorities are going to shift a little, I'm guessing. So what is the most important issue to you?
In this disastrous moment in American history, my overarching concerns is the movement toward authoritarianism and the undermining of democracy. And Trump doing that by trying to divide us up by the color of our skin or the country we were born in or our religion in a way that no president, not even the most conservative presidents, have ever dreamed of doing. And simultaneously with that is the movement toward oligarchy, where you are seeing a smaller and smaller number of billionaires exercising extraordinary power over our economy and our political life. You've got 3 people in America now who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. And the Koch brothers and others are trying to basically buy our democracy, electing right-wing Republicans. So those are the overarching concerns that I have. And then underneath that, you got a million issues in terms of the decline of the middle class and racism and everything else.
So how do we mobilize progressives and just true believers in a fair democratic system to spread the message against all the propaganda out there that leads Americans to vote against their best interests?
And by the way, congratulations to you, the Young Turks, and other digital media for breaking through barriers in providing information to people that we don't see on corporate television. We're going to talk about Medicare for all today.
Yes.
Virtually not discussed on CBS, NBC, ABC, etc. And to answer your question, you do not have the opportunity today, nobody, to say, oh, I'm living in despair, I'm discouraged, I am so depressed. Sorry, you don't have that opportunity. Because what's going on now is not just impacting you and your world. This is for future generations. Are we going to have a planet that is in fact habitable, or is climate change going to ravage this country and other countries around the world? You can't sit by idly. You got to fight back. And here is the very good news, and I want everybody to understand this. On virtually every major issue that we talk about, the American people are with us. They are not with Donald Trump. They don't believe we should give tax breaks to billionaires and raise taxes on the middle class. They don't believe we should throw 30 million people off of health insurance. They believe we should raise the minimum wage. They believe in equal pay for women, etc., etc. Our job is to mobilize, to educate, to organize, to stand up, to fight back. We are beginning to see that. We saw that on November 7th. We saw it just the other day in Alabama, where a huge African-American turnout against all the odds defeated Roy Moore and elected Doug Jones. So we are making progress. Good people are starting to run for office. If you're out there, give us some thought. You can run for school board. You can run for city council. You know what? You can do those things. Let's get involved.
So let's move on to policy, specifically Medicare for All, which is a policy that you have been vociferously supportive of. What would a Medicare for All system look like in your dream world where you get exactly what you want?
Here's what it would look like. And it's not even a dream world. This is not utopian. This more or less exists in every other major country on earth. It exists 50 miles away from where I live in Burlington, Vermont. This is what it means, okay? It means you don't have a lot of money out there. A lot of people viewing this program don't have a lot of money. You're going to go to the doctor whenever you want to go to the doctor. If, God forbid, you become seriously ill, you're going to be able to go to the hospital. You're not going to have to worry about paying the bills because it's going to be paid for by public funding. And by the way, and this is an important point to be made, Medicare for all in Canada costs 50% of what our dysfunctional healthcare system costs right now. We're going to save middle-class families money. We're going to save small businesses money. Second of all right, you're a young person out there. Maybe you're now at a job, as millions of people are. You don't like your job, right? It happens once or twice in our lives. We don't like the work we're doing. Why are we at the work? Why are we at the job we're at? Because maybe they're providing decent health insurance. Maybe you have some kids. Maybe you have a husband, you have a wife. You need good health insurance. When we have Medicare for all, it means you don't have to stay at a job you don't want just because of the health care. You can start a new business. You can go to some other type of company. You'll be better able to do the work you want, not have to worry about health care. Third of all, you're a small business. You're a decent human being. You want to provide health insurance to your employees. Frankly, it costs you a fortune to do that. You spend half your life trying to figure out how you get the best price for health care that you can for your employees. You're not going to have to do that anymore. They don't do that in Canada. They don't do that in the UK because every one of your workers will have health care as a right. So what does it mean? It means freedom of choice regarding the doctor you want to go to, the hospital you go to. It means not having to worry whether you're rich or poor, how you're going to pay the bill. It means you don't have to stay at a job you don't want. It means you don't have to spend half your life as a small businessman worrying about health care. It means that as a nation, we will be spending 50% less per capita on health care than we currently do. This is a very, very important step forward, and we've got to join the rest of the industrialized world in expanding Medicare to cover every man, woman, and child.
Senator Sanders, I have to be honest with you in that having these conversations with you is depressing. And the reason why it's depressing,
I'm depressing you. It's very nice of you.
Because as I sit across from you, it's hard to absorb what could have been in this country and in terms of our leadership. But to play devil's advocate, current polling indicates that about 60% of Americans are in favor of a Medicare for all system. So the majority of Americans, you're right, are in favor. But for the remaining 40% who are either unsure or against it, one of their concerns is taxation. Oh, my taxes are going to go up. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Good point. And please understand that, number one, there has been very, very little political or media coverage about what a Medicare for all system is about, which is why I appreciate talking to you about. We don't see this on corporate media. Number two, you got the insurance companies and the drug companies who will fight this tooth and nail. You got right-wing Republicans who will fight it, and they will lie about it. So let me answer the question that you asked. It's a good question. And what the 30-second ads that have already been run against me say, Bernie Sanders and advocates of Medicare for all, they want to raise your taxes. Oh, my God, that's a terrible thing. What are they forgetting to say? They are forgetting to say that we are doing away with your private health insurance premiums. So let's just say you are a person in the individual market. You're self-employed. Maybe you're spending $10,000, $15,000 a year for health insurance. You're not going to have to pay that anymore. Are you going to be paying more in taxes? Yes, you are, depending upon your income. So let's say hypothetically, you're now paying $10,000 a year to a private insurance company for your health care. That's gone, and you pay $5,000 more in taxes, hypothetically. You're $5,000 to the good. Okay, you're a small business person. You may be now paying, on average, about $9,000 per employer. And if you end up paying $5,000 more in taxes and not having to pay that $9,000 to a private health insurance, you are to the good. Point is that a Medicare for all system is far more efficient and cost effective. It will cost us less money. That will benefit virtually everybody.
So you brought up the big campaign donors, the pharmaceutical industry, the private insurance industry, and how they will fight tooth and nail. And they have resources that the average American doesn't have to influence certain politicians. So is it possible to get a Medicare for all system under our current political climate?
Great question. And let me give you an example of the power that these people have. Last year, I went to California to help the folks there campaign for a ballot initiative that would have lowered prescription drug costs in the state of California. Take a wild and crazy guess as to how much money the drug companies spent to defeat that. You want to take a guess?
Millions.
Millions? $130 million. $130 million. Similar proposal was brought up in Ohio, not as big a state as California. They spent something like $55 million. The drug companies literally have unlimited resources. like Fort Knox. They have just as much as they need. And the reason they have so much money is they charge us by far the highest prices in the world, about double what the rest of the world pays for prescription drugs. So your question, which is a very important question, is can we, if you have Donald Trump as president and right-wing Republicans running the House and the Senate, are you going to get Medicare for all? The answer is of course not. And that ties in the need for a political revolution. Canada got their single-payer healthcare system way back when, some 30 years ago, when in Saskatchewan you had a premier who had the guts to take on the whole system. It worked in Saskatchewan and eventually spread all over the country. In the UK, their national health system developed in 1948, I believe, when the Labour Party took power there, a political revolution. So what we need in this country is to bring working people together, young people together, progressives together, to demand a government that works for all of us, not the 1%. And an implicit part of that is the guarantee that healthcare is a right, not a privilege.
So you're working tirelessly to get the message out there, to help mobilize voters and get them to do something about this corrupt political system. But I'm curious about your colleagues, specifically your Democratic colleagues. I know that you have co-sponsors when it comes to the Medicare for All policy, but not nearly enough supporters in the Senate to pass this type of legislation. Why is that?
Well, as of now, in addition to myself, we have 16 co-sponsors. And your viewers would know the names of them. They are, generally speaking, most of the most progressive members of the Senate. And in the House, there are also a very significant number of co-sponsors to a single-payer bill. The reason that we don't have more is that I think many members of the Congress are nervous about just the issue that we talked about. When you stand up to the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry and the ideology of right-wing Republicans, they're going to come after you. They're going to throw a lot of money into political campaigns. But the good news here is that a couple of years ago when I introduced similar legislation, I had one sponsor. So we're making progress, and the more important news is the American people are catching on that the Affordable Care Act was a step forward, but it did not go far enough. Momentum is with us, but to get to your point, we are not going to do this unless there's a political revolution, unless people become engaged politically and demand that the government start representing all of us, including healthcare for all.
So I want to conclude this conversation by talking about a really great idea that you had. And you noticed that mainstream press had no interest in covering this policy. They didn't want to talk about Medicare for all for whatever reason.
Well, we know what the reasons are. We don't know whatever reason. You turn on television today, what are you going to see? The pharmaceutical industry running these crazy ads. I would be nervous about taking these drugs with all of the side effects, but that's another story.
Right.
But they are dependent on advertising from the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance companies.
You're right. And, just as our politicians are bought, mainstream media is experiencing the same type of corruption. Yes. So there is a way to get around that, and that is independent media. Yes. So you have this great idea that I would like you to share with our audience, and it's something that we're working on at the moment.
It is a great idea, not just my idea, but a lot of people's idea. The idea is twofold. Number one, really for the first time, I think, we are going to have a town meeting devoted toward a better understanding of what Medicare for All is. To answer some of the very good questions that you raised, we're going to hear from physicians, we hear from economists, we'll hear from people who may be critical of the idea and listen to their concerns. But we will spend a significant amount of time talking about why the United States is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all, while we spend twice as much per capita for a dysfunctional healthcare system. So that's one thing. But here's the second thing that excites me very much, is I have believed for a very, very long time that not that corporate media is fake news. That's not what it's about. It's not that they lie about this or that. But there are major areas where, for a variety of reasons, mostly economic, they choose not to focus. All right? They're not going to focus too much about income and wealth inequality. because the people who own their networks are in the 1%. And they're not going to focus on an issue like Medicare for all because of their dependency on pharmaceutical industry advertising and insurance company advertising. So what we have done, and the Young Turks are right in the middle of it, is put together several independent media sources outside of corporate media who are going to be broadcasting and live streaming this event. And I am extraordinarily excited about that, because what we are doing with your help, the great work you guys are doing, is allowing us the opportunity, we hope and expect, to talk to millions of people directly without having to go through corporate media, where we can have a serious discussion without being censored in terms of the areas that we can go into and have the time to do it. So I am really excited about this. This is, I think, kind of revolutionary, is it not?
I do think it's revolutionary. And one of my criticisms during the past election, especially during the primaries, was that the debates were only being held by mainstream media outlets, and a lot of the important issues weren't being talked about.
Absolutely.
And so it will be awesome to kind of dig into this policy and also hear from other medical professionals from other countries who have some thoughts on this.
Have you heard, let me just detour a little bit to pick up on your point. In terms of corporate media coverage, do you hear a lot on television about the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision?
Never. Never.
Now, why not? Why do you think not? You know why not? They benefit. They are the major beneficiaries of all of these 30-second ads that Citizens United has allowed to take place through independent expenditures. But your point is exactly right. What we need is a forum and an opportunity to talk about real issues without worrying about, the economic interests coming down on us. So I am very excited about this. We think it is revolutionary in the sense this could be the very first step in bringing millions of people into serious discussion about the serious issues facing our country with the time that we need to really go into depth about them. So I want to thank the Young Turks and the other independent digital companies for their support in this effort.
All right. Thank you so much to Senator Sanders, and thank you so much to everyone watching. Please keep an eye out for the town hall that we were just speaking about. We are working on it, and it will be an important conversation that, again, you're not really seeing on the cable news networks.